Hello and welcome. I'm Raghav and today we are going to learn how to extract value from an XML response in an API and then use the value in any other subsequent API request in SoapUI open source version. So there are two ways we can do this. One is using a property transfer step and the other way is through a Groovy code, and we will see both the ways here, and I will go very basic step by step, so do not worry if you have no prior knowledge. Step number one here will be, and before I go to step number one, let me go to my soap UI here on Windows, and you can also follow this on Mac. And I will first create a soap request and create soap requests here. So I will click on this soap icon and I will give a project name and a WSDL URL. For WSDL, I will just go and search for some sample soap web service, and here is a web service for calculator. Let me just go here, and here you can see we have these API requests in this service: add, divide, multiply and subtract, and here is the service description. So I can go here and I will get the WSDL URL from here, and this is the WSDL URL. I will copy this and I will paste it here in the initial WSDL, and the name, it has taken calculator, so let me just go with this, and I will also make this available here in the references. This is the URL, and I will have all these notes available in the description of this video, so you can refer them from description. So here I will just say okay, it will create the project, and it has also created the sample requests. Now it has also created for soap and soap version 1.2. Let me delete one of these, and yes, so here I have a request for add, divide, multiply and subtract. If I go to add, here is a request. I will give two integers here, 2 and 3, and I will run this, and I'm getting the addition result. So I will now create a test suite inside this project. So right click on the project and new test suite. I will keep the default name test suite 1. You can give it any name, and inside, let me also save the project. I will save it on my desktop folder, projects, SoapUI August 2019. And inside test suite, I will now create a new test case. So right click on test suite and new test case, and I will just say this is test case 1 and okay. And now inside test case 1, I will add these API requests. So I will go to the add request, and I can do a right click and say add to test case, or I can directly add it from this button here, add this request to test case. I will click this, select the test suite and test case and say okay, and here I will give the name as add and keep the other options as default and say okay, and here the request is added in the test case. If I run it from here, still I am getting the result. Now let me also take some other request as well so that I can show you the chaining. I will take this multiply request, and here if I give some numbers here, integers, let us say 3 and 4, and I run this, I'm getting the multiplication result here. So I will again add this to the test case, and I will name this as multiply, and now both of these are added in the test case. So this is step number 1, add the API requests in a test case. And now step number 2 will be add property transfer step. So here in my test case, I will close all these windows and I will go to my Explorer here, test case. Now here I will do a right click. Now I can do a right click by selecting, after selecting this add API, so that the next step gets created after this. So I can do a right click here, insert step, and here we have a property transfer step. So I will select this property transfer, and you can name it anything. For now I will just go by the default name, property transfer. And here we have got this window. I will create a new property transfer by clicking on this plus button. So this is step number 3. Create a new property transfer. So I will click on this plus button, and let's say I can name this as transfer number. So basically what I want to do is I want to go to this, I want to run this add API, and I want to fetch this value, that is 5, that is the addition result from this, and then go to multiply and provide this value here in the request. Instead of 3, that is for integer a, I want to provide that value from there, and then run the multiply API, and then I will verify the result. So as a example demo, this is what I want to do. So here in the transfer, property transfer, here I have to provide the source and the target details. So here step number 4 is provide source and target details. So here source is our add API, so I can just select the add API here. The property is I want to get the data from the response, so I will select response here, and then because this is XML, so I will keep this XPath. Similarly, when I come to target, here the target is the multiply API. Property will be the request of this API because we want to add the data in the request, and then this will be XPath. So we have added details of source and target. Now we also have to add the XPath. So if you go to this source API or the add API, from this SOAP response, I have to get this value, and I have to provide an XPath so that I can tell the property transfer step from where exactly to fetch the value. So I have to give an XPath here. We have already seen a example of JSON path in the earlier videos, how we can extract JSON response. In this case, we have to provide a XPath to extract response from an XML message. So here, the first thing is click on this NS colon, that is for namespace, and if you go here, it will say, it says declare available response request namespaces in source and target. So I will click here, and you can see it generates some statements both in source and target section. So this is step number 5 is click on this NS, and that is namespace, and provide XPath for source as well as for target. So now I also have to provide an XPath, and as I told you, XPath is the path to this particular value in an XML message. Now there are multiple ways you can create an XPath. For example, I will copy this and I will go to Google and search for XML toolbox. So here is a link for XML toolbox. I will also make all these links available. So this is a link for XML toolbox. Now I will copy this message, this SOAP message, and here it says insert your XML into the big field. So I will copy this here, and then to generate an XPath, place the cursor in the text attribute or element you want an XPath to. So I just have to place my cursor or click on this value, and it will generate the XPath here. So I will click here and you can see it has generated the XPath for that particular node or value. Now this may not work directly in SoapUI. We do not need all these namespace and URLs, so you can get rid of all these URLs which are in these square brackets, and then you can try this. However, uh, there are some other ways. For example, there is something called as XML grid. So I'll also copy this. This is XML grid. Now here you can again copy your SOAP message and provide it here in this box, and then click on load, and you will see all your data here. And if you expand this, I have a body, I have an envelope node, body node, then add response. Again I will expand. This is the add result that I want, and here if I click, I am getting option to show XPath. If I click here, this is the XPath I am getting. So I will just copy this from here and go to my property transfer and provide it here in the source section. Now there is another good tool or online application which is xpather.com, and here also you can check your XPaths. So I will also make this available here, xpather. So here what you can do is you can just copy your XML message and put it here in this area, and then give your XPath here. So if you want to test your XPaths, you can provide it here. For example, the XPath I have copied, this one I will provide here in this area, and you can see it says it highlights this node, that means it is matching. It highlights elements found is 1, so it founds a single match, and the value is 5, so that means our XPath is correct. So this is also a very good utility and it will be very handy. So this also will be very useful. I will have all these in the description of the video. So now I have this. Also let me go to the next API, and here we need to get the response. We need to get XPath of this particular node where we want to add the result of addition. So I will again copy this and go to here xmlgrid.net, provide the XML message here and say load, and again I will expand this, and this is my node where I want to add. So I'll click here and say show XPath, and this is the XPath generated. I will copy this, and in the property transfer I will go to the target, and in the next line just paste this XPath. Now once you have added the XPaths for both source and target, you can click on this run button to run this property transfer and check the output if this is working fine. So if I run this, and here you can see in the logs there is some exception. So it says error at character 18 on line 2, and you can see the details here. So soap env envelope, here it says prefix has not, so there is some message. Alright, so here what you can do is in SoapUI, all these prefixes or namespaces you can give a regular expression. For example, I can say star instead of the word here, and that means it can be any word here, it can be anything, it will always match, because these namespaces and these prefixes may change. So it is better to give star instead of these hard-coded items. So I will just change everything by this star, and then I will save everything. And now let me try to run this again, and I'm getting null, that means from the target I'm not getting. So let me also do the same thing for target. All these namespaces and prefixes for every node I am going to replace with star. Let me try now. I will also have to add for this add response tag. I will say star colon, and here else also star colon. And if I run this now, yes, I am getting 5. That means this property is getting transferred properly. So this is working now. Now I can run and check. I can also go to multiply API, and you can see it has already added 5 here because we have run the property transfer step. So I know now it is working fine. So I can just go to my test case and now run this, and it has done. If I go to the multiply API, you can see it has taken 5 as integer a, and 4 was already here, and the result is 20. So we are able to do property transfer, or we are able to chain our response and request using the property transfer step. So this is the first way. Now the second way is with Groovy. So here is the second way with Groovy script. Now here I will just disable this property transfer so that this does not runs now. I will say disable test step, and now I'll close all this. I will create a new Groovy step. So right click on the test case or test step and say add step. I will select Groovy script, and you can name it anything. I will go with the default name, and this is the Groovy script. Let me take it to the top, and here, or let me just keep it after the add API so that we have this API executed before we run the Groovy script, because we also need the response from add API. Now here the first statement will be testRunner.testCase.getTestStepByName, and in the brackets I will give the name of the test step. Now this is a standard statement. Whenever you want to get any step in the test case, any request step, you will use this, and this time we want to get the add step, that is the add API request. So I will say add here, and then I want to get the response from this API, so I will say get property value response. So if I run this, let me say, let me put this inside tags quotes, and yes, this is working fine now. So it is getting the response from that API. Now I can also store the response in a variable. So I will say def resp, or let me just say response. So I am storing this into a variable called response. Alright, now the next thing is we will use a XmlSlurper, that is a class in Groovy that is used to get and pass XML responses or XML messages. We have already seen JSON Slurper in the earlier session, so this time we are going to use XML Slurper from Groovy. So if I go to Google and search for XML Slurper or Groovy XML Slurper, and here I have got some links. Let me go here, and yes, I will also copy this in the notes. Groovy XML Slurper, and this is very straightforward. You just have to use this. So you can see there are 3 steps, 1, 2 and 3. Now in our case we just have to use the first step for getting the parsing the XML message. So I will copy this and paste it here. So I'm saying new XmlSlurper dot parseText, and here I have to give the response. So the response I have stored in this variable. I will copy this and pass it here, and then this will be stored into this variable list. So this you can name anything, like I can say object, and if I run this now, you can see I am already getting the result, that is it is already fetching the value from the response message of add and giving us the output, that is 5. Now this is because in our case this is a very simple XML with a single node in the result or a single value node, and that is why it is able to fetch it directly. Otherwise the next step will be you will use the object, or you will use whatever variable you have given here, or whatever variable you have stored this object dot, and you will give your XPath. So whatever XPath, for example, you have some nested structure where we have multiple nodes, multiple value nodes, and they are nested like they have parent and childs, then you will provide a proper XPath, and you can use all these tools, XML toolbox, XML grid, or XPather. And then for example it can also be a sample XPath. For example, I can say object dot add response dot add result and dot text. So I can just get the text value, and this I can store in a variable, say value, and this value will get your actual value that you want to provide to the next API. Now in our case, because we have a single value node and we are already getting it here, so I just have to say object dot text, and I will run this and check I'm still getting the result. I can also log this value by saying log.info, and I can just say value is and this, and I will run this and I'm getting this here. So this is working fine. Now the next step is we are able to extract the value from the response of first API using Groovy script. Now we have to provide it to the next API. So for that, a easier and straightforward way is, if you try to do that through Groovy scripting, there can be multiple steps, but the easier way will be just create a property step. So do a right click on the test case or test steps and say add step, and you will have a option for properties. Add a property step. You can give it any name. Let us say I call it my properties and say OK, and here you can see we have got a property step. So the name is just my properties. The number that you are seeing here, that is 0, is the count of variables or properties inside the step. So as of now there are 0. If I click on plus and I will name something, let us say add result, and now you can see it shows 1 here. Otherwise the name is just my properties. Add result, and I will keep the value blank and I will close this. Now from here, from this Groovy script, I have to update the value of this add result, and whatever value will come here I will update in the multiply API request. So for updating the property here, I will get hold of this property step, and this is the standard way like we have already seen, testRunner.testCase.getTestStepByName. So I will copy this here, and here this time the name of the step is my properties, and then I will say dot set property value, and I will say here the value we have, the property we have is add result. And even if you do not have this property already created, if you run this it will create the property as well, and if it is already there it will update the value. I will say set property value add result to this value, so whatever will be the data in this value will get updated here. So I will say value, and all this we have already seen in the earlier session. So if I go to my website automation step by step and go to online courses, let me just show you in a moment. So this is the statement. Let me show you, this is what I'm doing, and now this will update the value in the property, and now I just have to have a way where I can refer the value from the properties and refer it here at this location. Instead of 5, I will refer it from here. And here on my website automation step by step, you can go to online courses, and if you go to SoapUI course, you will find all this Groovy script to set and get properties, and then how to refer properties on a step. All this I have covered in earlier videos. So if you see the properties, how to use properties, get and set properties through Groovy scripts, you will find it here. So now I will go here to the multiply API request, and here I will say to refer the value from properties, I will say dollar and curly brackets, and here I will say give the step name, that is my properties, and then hash the property name, which is addResult. Alright, so this is what I have used. I will also copy this here, and also the Groovy script, I'll copy it for reference in the notes. So just in case you have any issues, you can refer it from the notes. And now if I run my test, let me check. I will run the test and see the output. So this is working. If I go to the multiply, you can see here I have just this reference, but it should have referred the value, and therefore it is providing us the output as 20. Just in case I change something in add, let us say I say here 4 and 5. Now the output will be 9, the result will be 9, and that will go to as the first integer of multiply. So if I run this now, and if I go to multiply, you can see it should be 9 multiplied by 4, and I am getting the result as 36. So this is working fine, and this is how you can chain API requests, and you can extract XML value from a XML message and chain the next API request. I hope this was very useful for you. Thank you for watching.